Good day everyone. So this tutorial will be going over how to create a spaceship in 3DCoat. Also in this process I use Shipwright within Blender add-on and also brought it back into Blender to actually set it up. So let's go. If you don't have Shipwright, I suggest try to create a spaceship similar to the one I'm creating or something similar so you can follow along. Also, I do have a Patreon page. If you want to join that, you can always download the models and terrain and other things that I've created just to make it easier to follow along. All right, so here we go. So here we start with Shipwright, and I'm going to pull this out. Basically start with the basic ship model. I'm basically going to select create. The best thing to do is load the actual existing Shipwright object that comes with it, and then kind of manipulate these numbers to something that you like. I'm trying to get something that would look really cool, rotated or warped around each other is what my objective is here. So I'm going to kind of go through some of these and pick one that looks, in my opinion, a good fit for what I'm trying to do to create the overall spaceship. So here I'm going to change the seed. Went with 25 there, and not so much in that respect. I'm going to keep changing this. Alright, we're going to continue to change this. So let's bring this number up. And basically it goes through it pretty quick. It's a great program for adding in ship details and things like that. So this looks pretty cool. Definitely need to have a little bit more of a rotated body though, is what I'm looking for. Alright, so I'm going to basically select the lattice here and go to edit mode. And this is kind of some of the abilities that you have with this program or this add-on. You select these points and you can bring everything down just to give it a curvature. So you hit the G key and we can hit the Z and we can bring that down. Pretty simple to use, like I said. We can actually select a few other things here and kind of maneuver this. And we'll hit the G key. We'll bring this a little closer on the X. Again, we'll bring this down a little bit. Make this a little bit wider. We can bring this up a little bit and the rest of it's down. Give it some good variations. Alright, so we'll just a little bit more here. Just bring some of these points down. Like I said, try to get a nice curvature going for the build out of this spaceship. Once you select the points, you just hit the G key on the Z, move them up and down, or you can move them out X, Y, whichever you prefer. For this tutorial, I'm pretty much just adjusting as I need to. A few more points here to relocate. We'll bring this out so it's a little bit wider. Again, we'll bring this in a little bit less. And now we're going to go in and just do basically we're looking for 3D print toolbox, so select that. What I normally do is I make sure this is a non-manifold when I send this out to 3DCoat, just because, or if you're going to remesh something, it's another good option because it cleans up the mesh, closes any holes that you might have. So I normally select the 3D print. Alright, so once in there, I'm going to hit clean up and make manifold. And that pretty much cleans everything up. Check all. So we're going to go and mirror. I'm using hard ops to do this to make it easier. Select the opposite side and just mirror that. So it's all consistently the same. And now I'm going to export this out as an OBJ. So I can bring this into 3DCoat. And I'm going to make sure that I got selected only. And the Z, negative Z, and the Y up axis. Cool. So let's send it out. Now we're going to import this object into 3DCoat through using the voxel method. That way we're going to actually just work with voxels. So let's select the object and we're going to open it. And there it is. When it comes in kind of small, 72,000 basically polys is what it's showing here. I'm going to scale this up to it's around about a million and a half, somewhere in there. And then I'm going to also hit the subdivide to kind of make it a little cleaner. And I'm going to hit it one more time. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and say apply to bring it in. And you can say no. So now you can bring this up. For some reason I have this created right away, so we could bring this up with the transform tool now. Let's bring this up on the, I guess we'll call it the y-axis with 3DCoat. It's a little different than Blender, so you gotta make sure you know what you're doing. Okay, so we can move this and turn it around a little bit on that axis so it has more of a curvature. And also, go ahead and move the gizmo. I think this would be easier if I do that first. So we'll select the move only gizmo, and then we can take that back off again. And we can start working on this. So let's bring it up a little bit more. So we can actually pull this up. All right, so I think that looks cool. A little bit more that way as well. On the X. All right, so that's really cool looking. 3DCoat. So I'm now going to select the warp tool, and I'm going to make sure I go into the final angle and put down 360. Now sometimes these will be backwards with the flipped polys, so if that happens, just put a negative in here. That way it does the exact opposite, and that works out great. Saves you a real hassle trying to flip polys. Now you could play with the overlap and just adjust to what your liking might be. As you can see, I'm kind of trying to get a good look for the ship, is what my objective is here. Every time you move it, it has a different angle, a different look to it, which is really cool. Okay, a little bit more on the overlap. Bring it down a little bit. And we can change the amount of segments too to give it more variations. Again, this is really powerful, this part of their tool set. All right, continue to adjust a little bit more. All right, so we can do that. Do it again. Just try and get to where I need to go. So I can go back to where I kind of was at originally. So final angle, again, I'm going to go ahead and do a negative 360. This time we're going to change some things. Let's go and add a little bit more detail. So we're going to add one more section of detail here. So it goes to 10 instead of 5. Take a second to go through the process. All right, it's going through a process. There's quite a bit of polys here being converted. Okay, we increase that by 1. So that's at 1 times. Before it was 0.10. This will give you more detail for the object itself that you're creating. Okay, we can go to the right view, see what this looks like. And now we could use the pose tool, which is really powerful. We went ahead and selected yes on the transform. All right, so now that created it, it actually created a bunch of these sections, and now I'm going to basically combine them all into one object. So we can go in there. Regular brush here. I'm just going to bring this out all the way out. So try and get this straight. Cool. All right, so now that that's been created, you could actually go in and select the edge here and just pull this out. We're going to try to just basically stretch it so it looks a little bit longer. I think before it's too short. we could kind of play with this a little bit just to adjust it. Alright, so now I'm going to bring in the cylinder and I'm going to scale this thing up. It's definitely way too small. I also want to bring it over to the side over here. So let's go and scale this up. Put it on the side view here so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to rotate this basically 90 degrees. Going to line it up with that line in the center there. And I'm going to change the actual diameter to make this bigger. This will become a tank basically. This is what I'm creating, is a tank. Putting 4 tanks throughout. I'm also adding in a fillet so I can have it nice and rounded on the tips like a tank that it looks like. So, okay, so I'm going to set those settings right where it's at. I'm going to also add in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to add a little bit more up to 7 times, and now I'll apply. And I've added more detail to it. So now looking at it, I kind of want to move this closer in. So I'm just replacing this object closer. And I'll just delete the other one afterwards, but I want to make this a little bit bigger. I felt that this was a little too small. So I'm going to put this in place, and here we go. I'll push it a little bit more so it actually is into the body somewhat. Also want to change the diameter, make it a little bit thicker. Not to delete the other cylinder because not needing that anymore. So now that I'm content with that cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and create the actual straps to hold it in place. Something has to hold this tank to the ship. And it could have been in the inside, but it just looks better when you have more detail on the outside of something. Just makes it look like it belongs. If you hide something, nobody knows what it is. It's just confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, hit the cylinder. Same cylinder as before, but actually increase the radius. And I'm going to take off the actual fillet. And I'm going to bring out the height down. And that's where it lines up with the existing cylinder. And I'm going to just start moving this into place. And basically I'll need 2 of these to hold it. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit of fillet here just so it has a little bit rounded. Don't want to make it too sharp. That this is just too sharp is never a good thing. Go ahead and apply. And we also made sure that was at 7 times. Now this object is like very intensive. It's 64 million now as we keep going. I will need to go back and kind of update the model with less voxels, so I'll be doing that a little bit later. If it's too slow for you right now, I suggest you go ahead and go in there and go to resample and take each of these sections down. I would maybe use the main body itself, like maybe 8 or 9 million voxels. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go to the actual tool for cutting. So let's do the cutoff. We're going to cut off that other prior one that we created. So let's go and use the square tool. And make sure you're actually on the right layer. So now I'm going to take both of those 2 sections and combine them. So select them both, and then you can say merge selected. And go ahead and drop that. That way they're in one layer. So now I want to symmetrize this. So I'm going to go over to geometry and select sim copy. And you got to make sure that the symmetry things are checked on the X. And that's all you really need to do. And then we could say symmetry copy. We're selecting the actual brackets. Cool. Now we could actually select the once we hide these, select the tank. Make sure it's selected on X. Again, symmetry copy. Takes a few seconds. There it goes. So one thing you could do to save some time also is to kind of bring this stuff down so it's not such a high poly count. Basically, you bring this down, it's much easier to copy it. These are massive sizes. These are like 16 million polys. Just for easiness, I would do that first. Okay, we're going to rename this, and we're actually going to. So we duplicated the tank first, so we're going to actually use that to cut the actual brackets. So now we can use this to cut or subtract from the actual brackets. The best method is to rename things so it's easier to find. So okay, we're going to go ahead and subtract from. So select that, and we'll subtract it from the tank. Copy. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so we're going to hide a few of these objects so we can see what we're doing. So basically just left the tanks and the tank holders. I just want to make sure that those actually got cut like they're supposed to have. Cool. Now we can actually go in and resample this. 34 million for these tanks. Should have done this earlier, like I said. I'd go down to like maybe 2 million. I think that should be sufficient. If your computer can't take a lot, then you want to go down to 1 million. Again, I'm going to redo this in Blender anyway for the tanks. Just easier to make cylinders like that there. You could do it here, of course, but it just going to have a lot more polys. Alright, so now I reduce those down quite a bit, and that way helps lower the stuff down. So we're now at 32 million voxels, polys. Alright, just kind of take a look at this and see what else I want to do to create this rocket ship, to give it some variations. It does have a lot of good detail, which I like, from the shipwright model that we brought in. Alright, so now let's go to the front view, and we're going to add a primitive. And we're going to bring this into the center, where it's at exactly. And we're going to go back to the front view. Going to realign this. Okay, so I'm going to move the cylinder back to the back section here. I'm going to readjust again, bring it up closer. Make sure you select the yellow section here. And we're going to bring it in. So I'm going to actually cut some of the inner pieces in here to clean it up a little bit, just to kind of take some of this weight away. So I'm going to extrude it out now. And I'm also going to increase the actual top diameter. I want to make it too big because, again, it'll penetrate through, so you got to be careful what you're doing. Okay, we're going to also bring up the bottom a little bit so it's a little thicker on the bottom. So now we're going to actually apply add. I actually have that add new object for primitive selected right below the apply, which is if you're just going to add a lot of stuff, then you can select that, but I know we don't select that. So one thing we got to take off is the add new object. For some reason that got selected by accident. Got to make sure I turn that off. Now we could actually say subtract. If you have that selected, make sure you deselect it. Okay, select subtract, say apply. Just a good way to add the original add. Helps give some depth to the inside. So we're going to merge some of these to make it easier. Merge selected. So it becomes one object. One time, so it's fine. When you merge something, you got to make sure you go with the higher number last. That way it takes on the last one. If you want the higher detail, of course. If you want lower detail, then go with the lower one last. So now I'm going to work on the top section of the ship. I'm going to add in a cylinder with a hole in it this time. So go ahead and start with it, and we're going to rotate it and bring it out a little bit so we can see what we're doing with it. So we'll go to the side view. That way we can see exactly the position of this. Sometimes you got to go back and forth sometimes. Okay, you also got number keys that you can use. Anyway, just rotate this around so the arrow is lined up with the line. And then we can bring this in. And then let's go ahead and use the diameter to bring it up. And I'm going to bring this closer to the front. I'm going to change the actual relative hole radius. So let's bring this up. And now we'll bring this up a little bit more. On the bottom here. Not too much, but just about right. Okay, so I'm going to scale this up a little bit more. Just adding some more detail to the upper section here. We're going to add that in. Make sure it's on the right section, and take one. Alright, so now I'm going to scale this up a little bit more just to get in the right position. And I'm liking that, so I'm going to go ahead and select add. Add that into this section here. Make sure it's on the right level. And once you apply, it goes to shipwreck test 1 area. Now it's added to this. Cool. It's a nice variation. So now I'm going to bring this down. I'll bring it up a little bit more. And I'm going to add in a top piece here. So I'm going to go to the side here. I'm going to bring this back out. And keep it at the same diameter as the top was, basically. And then we're going to bring this in. It's okay, we're going to add some other detail around this thing to make it look right. So I'm going to bring this diameter just a little bit bigger. And we're going to apply to the same object. Cool. Alright, so that's that. Okay, so now we're going to add another connection piece here. So we're going to scale this up a little bit. So it's just right within that zone. I'm going to use a fillet. A little bit more of a radius there. And we could again apply just to add some variations to it. We're adding one here too as well. Okay, so we're going to add another cylinder here. For some reason I moved the location of the axis for some reason, so we can replace this again, put it in the right place. So let's go and bring this down. Look for the arrows center on the line in the center there, and we'll bring this out a little bit. Again, we need to kind of just get this perfectly lined. There we go. Then we can make it a little bit thicker, something like that. Bring it in a little bit. Again, we're just adding some more variations to this. Let's just dial this in a little bit more. So it's exactly the same on both sides for 419. Cool. Now we're going to add this again. First, let's get in a good position. Alright, we're going to scale this in a little bit. I don't want it too big. needs to actually connect to the other object. Something like that. Alright, so I'm going to fast forward through some of this simple stuff. Here we go. Alright, so now I'm going to actually work a little bit on the actual tank brackets. So we're going to select that and just hide everything else. We have a lot more options here that way. See what you're doing. It's good to hide stuff. We don't need it. Alright, so basically I'm going to create a disk on top of this disk and actually do some cuts into it and add some more detail to it. What I'm doing here. So I've actually created another disk into the center of this, and I just got to relocate it, make sure it's centered off of this thing properly. Definitely got to realign this and reset the axis. Cool. Let's pull it out. Okay, I'm going to continue to adjust this piece here. Oops, I can always undo that. Okay, let's move this in. Actually, I'm going to do a cut into this. So subtraction. Make this a little smaller. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to select both of them. Or select the one. Tank holder, copy. Here, so I'm basically going to right click here and subtract from. And the tank holder, go to the tank holder itself. Cool. Do that again. So we're going to also try this again. Alright, so now that's the actual copy 2 is what we need, so we had deleted that one extra copy. Okay, so again, we'll subtract from. Make sure you select the right one. Option 1. Okay, did what it's supposed to do. Can't really see until you move the object. So now I took that piece and I'm going to readjust it again. And again, I'm going to add this now to this existing object. That'll look pretty cool. So take that as well as the tank holder. So here we're going to merge, selected. There we go. Now we're going to cut the other ones off. Don't need these. We're going to redo all the other ones just like this one. Might as well copy and symmetrize it. So we're going to go to geometry. We're going to select sim copy. We're going to duplicate that. Or just move it over. Line it up. Cool. Again, we're going to go back to symmetry copy again. So So we reset the axis. So I'm going to move the gizmo now. And look at where the axis is. I want to make sure I line this up properly. So I'm going to move this over. Get the lines up with lines. Connect the lines to lines, basically. Alright, right there. Cool. I'll take off the move gizmo. And it's going to do geometry again and copy symmetry. So select copy symmetry. Then we're going to reset the symmetry. So from scratch. Let's do this again. Geometry. Symmetry copy. We'll make sure it's on the X. There it goes. That worked that time. Sometimes you got to work around things to make it work right. Okay, so we're going to now go back to primitives and we're going to add in another disk this time, solid, and we're going to again readjust this. So we'll go to the right side and we'll go ahead and move this to the side. See what we're doing. So let's move this over. I'm going to use this to cut some extra stuff away that we don't need. It's just taking up a lot of extra bandwidth of the actual polys and stuff. So anyway, I want to straighten this up. I'll also take out the symmetry. And then we'll pull this back. Now we're going to do the actual radius. So let's pull this out. We're bringing this in. Alright, adjust this a little bit more. So let's pull this out. Okay, let's adjust this a little bit more. Bring this down a little bit. Alright, so we got to basically lower down the back end. So select the bottom radius here and we'll bring it down. Something like that. We're just adjusting this a little bit more. We just adjust this a little bit more on the bottom radius. There we go. A bit more actually. Cool. Okay, let's make sure we select subtract. And make sure we're at the right level. So this is actually the main engine. So we're going to subtract. Cool. Alright. So that cleaned up quite a bit. There's still a few things inside here, but that's part of the other object. That's why it didn't get cut out. Well, it's actually a little farther back. Let's pull it back close to the front end and we'll cut some of this out. Again, we'll hit the subtract again. Apply. Alright, so we're going to subtract again this section here. Cool, that looks much better. Alright, so now I'm going to bring in another section here and rotate this again. This time it's just a regular cylinder with a hole in it. line this up. Cool. Bring the radius up. Also going to bring the height. We're going to adjust the top radius a little bit down, even though it's backwards. And so that's a little bit farther through. And this one just adjusting a little bit here. And that looks looking good. Basically, we're adding another layer inside here. It's like a another barrier. That way it look nicer inside. Here we're going to add it again. Here we go. All right, that came out nice. Much smoother inside. All right, so we're going to bring another primitive in. We're going to actually go with the cylinder. So now we've created the same location. We're going to bring it back a little bit. And change the actual settings here on the radius, top and bottom, so they're the same, basically. Cool. Now we're going to use a fillet. We're going to actually add in a little bit more roundness to this thing. So let's rotate this out a little bit. A little bit more. It's almost like a ball. We'll stretch it out a little bit more. And then we'll bring it in. So it actually is connecting to the other piece. 2. Alright, so we're going to actually add another layer here, so it's on a separate layer. So we'll hit the plus button there. And now we can actually apply, so it's on its own, basically, layer. So let's go wait for it. Okay, great. So we're going to now go ahead and add another primitive here, which is the square. And let's go ahead and try to place this in a better location. So we're going to go to the back view. Move this over a little bit. So I'm going to fast forward this section right here. Alright, so now I'm going to work on the top part of this spaceship, and I'm going to cut this section inside here. There's no need for that extra detail. So we're going to select that. We're going to use the cutoff section, make sure it's on the right layer, and delete that. Cool. Okay, now we can hide that other stuff. Alright, so we can go now to the Vox layer. And we're going to create some details. Okay, so we're going to select a section of this. We're going to make sure that this has radius to it. Like around 23.5, somewhere in there. And I'm just going to bring this out. And then reconnect it. And I had it on the symmetry also on the Y, which created the bottom section. Okay, so that's cool. I'm going to select another section here on the other side, on the sides basically. Give it some more variations. I'm going to put a round section on the top there, so that's why I'm not really connecting those. A little bit of thickness there. We're changing that around a little bit. Okay, cool. So the other sides came out. That's a pretty cool design. And I'm going to go select the primitive and actually now select the disk. I'm going to put this in the front of this thing to kind of take away those pieces on the edges there. It looks like it flows together properly. I want to make sure I rotate this, and I could also take off the symmetry. There's no reason for that. Okay, let's bring it in, and we're going to actually increase the radius. So let's do that. Cool. We can bring this in a little bit, and let's bring this out again. There we go. Now it's a little bit better. Make sure we have the right one. Okay, we're going to struct again. It's on the wrong layer for some reason. That looks better. Now we can bring this out a little bit. All right, so we're going to add this time. We're going to bring this out a little bit. We're going to also pull it a little bit outward and then just pull that out. Cool. And we're going to also bring the top in a little bit so it has a nice beveled, and we'll apply add. Cool. It's almost like a watermelon. Alright, so we're going to pull this out again. And I'm going to shrink it down a little bit into the thing, to the actual object. This time we're going to actually hit subtract. We're going to apply. And so we're going to clear the selection on the actual box layer, so it's not showing that the gray. Alright, so let's bring the primitive and bring that back in. Alright, so scale that up a little bit more. I decided to just kind of make it more smooth right there. I think that looks better. Make sure I'm on the right layer. Again, I'm going to hit apply with the subtract, and I also did that section as well. Again, hit the apply with the subtract. Cool. Now it's nice and flat there. We can then hide. Right, so now we're going to bring that in again. Should get the right layer. This time we're going to add. Just decided I want to put more of a little bit of a dome on the front of that. Thought that looked better. Right, so we're going to have to subtract the back end of that stuff now. It's not worth keeping all that extra stuff that we don't need. Okay, we're looking for the cutoff. Okay, just select that. Now we're going to go back to the back here and just delete these sections here. Make sure we got the right layers, of course. So we'll put each one of these and cut it. Okay, one more. Cool. Let's go ahead and hide and see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm done modeling actually within 3DCoat, and I basically brought this back into Blender to kind of just do some cleanup work, to change some of the things and reduce some polys down. I did actually do a auto retopo back into Blender so it wasn't so heavy, but at the same time I wanted to clean it up so it looks more, less busy as well as cleaner, especially for the front end, and reduce some of the voxels and polygons. So I'm fast forwarding through this, so I'm just going to put some music on. And thanks for joining me. Please subscribe. Really like to continue to proceed with these videos. Thumbs up if you like the content. I'll continue to drive more and more of this stuff. All right, thank you.